Okay, so welcome everyone to the new latest edition of NCVLI's Facebook Lives. This series, we are going to be elevating a campaign that we started and we kicked off at conference called Ask for Rights, where we're really going to start evaluating all the different areas that crime victims and survivors can elevate their voices by ensuring that they access the rights that they have by law. We will be live here the third Tuesday of each month to speak with partners across the country, including many of our RISE Project legal clinics, to discuss innovative ways that we can ask for rights in the various aspects of our justice system to ensure that crime victims are meaningfully engaged in that system. The National Crime Victim Law Institute fields thousands of technical assistance requests annually, and we encourage everyone to seek our expertise anytime you're facing challenges or concerns relating to or asserting and enforcing victims' rights. We are always here to help. I'm Jennifer Storm. I am a consultant with the National Crime Victim Law Institute. My pronouns are she and her. And this month I'm super excited because we have this amazing legal mind and partner with us, Andrea Rufo, who is the director of the Crime Victims' Rights Project Legal Action of Wisconsin. We were having some technical difficulties, but we're hoping that everything goes well. So welcome, Andrea. I'm so excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your position, and what you do.
So I am in Wisconsin. I work at Legal Action of Wisconsin, which is the largest civil legal aid organization in the state. And I work on a particular grant funded by the Victims of Crime Act, and it's called the Crime Victim Rights Project. And it actually is in conjunction with another civil aid organization in Wisconsin called Judicare. And Judicare specializes in kind of the northern half of Wisconsin. So Wisconsin is one of those states where the northern half is a lot of a kind of smaller counties, not as huge populations, whereas the kind of lower half, you've got Milwaukee, Madison, these bigger cities with lots of people. So we're combined with them. We're going into, I think, maybe our fifth year now, and essentially our project is designed to go into criminal cases, go into the criminal courtroom and ensure that victims are supported and their rights are being protected. And Wisconsin has actually a long history of being at the forefront of victim rights in terms of passing law. I would say maybe not as much, not to insult Wisconsin, in enforcing those laws. But so we have a kind of robust chapter 950, which lays out a lot of laws, but then we also about 2 years ago, this spring, passed a version of Marsy's Law that is currently in effect. So we use both of those and a lot of creativity to try and help our clients. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for giving us a bit of history on Wisconsin. That's always important. And I know you have a diverse background kind of coming from both sides of the bench, right? Or both sides of the bar, I should say. Talk to us a little bit about, so this month we're really focusing on trials, right? That trial level. So when a case actually, has an individual that's apprehended and they have gone through the prelim stage and gotten past prima facie and we're at trial. Can you talk a little bit about what you do in Wisconsin and how you're able to exercise victims' rights to ensure that they are enforced and protected at that trial level?
Yeah, and you're right. I do a somewhat I wouldn't say diverse background, but divergent. I prior to this, I was a public defender for 9 years, and I will tell you, I loved working as a public defender. I loved my office. It is an incredibly difficult job to do and to sustain long term, and I kind of reached a point where I needed to move on, and I came to Legal Action, and this project came up, and I was really interested in it, and people will often ask me, like, it seems weird you'd be interested, like it's almost the opposite of what you're doing before. And the funny thing is, like, I never look at it that way, because to me, well, for one, I think it kind of promotes a misconception that defendants' rights and victims' rights are zero-sum game, which is not the case. And yeah, it's absolutely the case that it's going to be true that sometimes in, enforcing a victim's right, a defendant's going to, not get some evidence that they wanted, or, not necessarily feel like they got a fair shake, or things like that. Are absolutely trade-offs, but people forget that victim rights laws, really across the board, but especially in Wisconsin, really started not about defendants, but about the state and prosecutors not doing their job and contacting victims and interacting with them. So that's one thing. But I think also, both of my parents were in law. They're recently retired. My dad was an attorney, my mom was an attorney, and then a magistrate. I remember going to hearings with them, and the one thing that always struck me, that continued to struck me as a public defender, and I think really is the basis of why I'm an attorney, is that the court system is really alienating. Like, it's really alienating. And you go in these rooms for trial, whether it's the actual trial itself, or all of the evidentiary hearings that lead up to trial. And you've got two people. You've got this defendant who's being accused of something, and you're talking about what they did or didn't do, and you've got this victim who experienced something, and you're talking about what happened to them, and it's very serious for both of them. It's, can be incredibly embarrassing details, incredibly personal details, and yet those are the people that will talk the least in the courtroom. In fact, often the defendant won't speak at all. It just strikes me as, I can't imagine being in that situation of all of these other people speaking essentially for me. And not only speaking for me, but speaking in a way I don't understand, like using language that doesn't make sense. And don't get me wrong, I love the rules of evidence. I'm kind of an evidence dork. Like, I really want to, like, if you want to sit and debate whether we can get something in through hearsay, like, that's my, like, oh, that sounds like fun. Like, let's do that. Kind of thing. Like, I'm that level of dork, but but trying to explain to a victim why her batter or his batter, when they beat them up 2 years ago, cannot be mentioned at trial, is really, like, counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense. And so I think I've always approached the law, both as a public defender and as a victim rights attorney, as the person that's there to guide you through the process and explain it and make sure that what you want is what is getting conveyed, and that what you want is getting conveyed. And I think so often, especially for victims, there's a sense of, it's not even so much about winning, a motion or winning a trial. It's being heard. They just want to be heard, and they want to know that someone's listening, and they want to know that, somebody is in their corner. And so,
when you think about those issues, right? Like, all of the rights that are central to trial, and obviously the right to be present, the right to be heard. When you think about those rights, what are some creative or innovative ways that in your career you have utilized the way to access those or activate those? Or have you had any challenges where, a victim's right was just denied and you had to kind of get creative to make sure that for those limited rights that they do have, that they are enforced?
Yeah. Well, I feel like almost everything that we've done has been kind of this creative thing. And as you can attest to, and I'm sure other videos of these will, although every state has some version of a victim rights law, the actual enforcement of them, the extent in which they, kind of address the needs of a victim are usually not sufficient, even remotely, kind of thing. And I think for us, when we started the project, what we were most surprised by was that even though Wisconsin had this fairly decent statutory law, the enforcement of it was not really a consideration, kind of thing. And the idea that a victim would be a separate entity with their own wishes and desires from the prosecution, and B, an entity that the court actually has to listen to. Those were definitely, so, I think really early on, it was a question of just like literally getting to the table, and then when you got to the table, I know early on, just by virtue of, criminal cases are so inherently entrenched in this two-person, adversarial rules. You've got two tables. And we would, they're like, well, sit with the prosecutor. And I would find myself like scooting my chair, like not on the same side, like not the same people, kind of thing. So so we just got really creative in terms of motion practice and just constantly filing. I would think at least the first 2 years, we just like argued standing over and over and over. And it was, you're back to law school, Marbury versus Madison standing arguments, kind of thing. And it took a while. NCVLI has helped us. We have, a case in front of the Supreme Court, Wisconsin Supreme Court, that's been just pending forever and going on forever and ever. That started with that issue of standing, where a judge was basically like, no, you don't have a right to comment. We're not going to hear you. And so things have gotten a little better practically on standing, but we still have that case pending for a kind of official ruling from the state. So so we look for different ways to argue rights, not just the rights that are in statutes, but general rights like Fourth Amendment, privacy rights in the Constitution. We look for other ways that we can, kind of sneak in a basis for standing. Probably the most common is using the idea of the subpoena process and motions to quash subpoenas, which is really a kind of civil discovery thing, but using that in criminal cases as a way to respond to a motion requesting records or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's all been new. It's all been, kind of paving new groundwork for talking about, what victims can actually do and say in court, independent from whatever the prosecution is doing, and sometimes in response to what the prosecution is doing.
So I love everything you said, because it is truly at the heart of our Ask for Rights campaign. We know and appreciate that every jurisdiction is different, and the laws on the books, for the most part, are a little varied. However, every state has victims' rights laws on the books. And so the heart of the Ask for Rights campaign is simply that: ask for these rights. And sometimes that means you have to motion the court repeatedly on one issue to continuously remind them, like, hey, this law is here. These victims, these survivors have these rights. Whether the judges interpret them the way that we hope that they will is that's always the unknown. And obviously your case before the Supreme Court is one of those, but we'll never know if we don't ask and ask and ask. So thank you so much for asking. And you obviously elevated NCVLI and the good work that they have done. So this is kind of a no-brainer, but would you recommend attorneys doing just that, like motioning the courts and having victims' rights attorneys and advocates connecting with NCVLI to do this important work. Would you recommend that?
Yeah, of course I would. And I would say, to be honest, and this is, I think, I was just talking to another friend about this. This is the absolute best thing that I learned from being a public defender, was lose. You're gonna lose, like, and it's not a big deal, kind of thing. Like, you're gonna lose motions. And if you try to play it safe, you're not gonna get anywhere. And so, put that idea of like winning, losing, your ego, just like put it away and, come up with the creative arguments. If it's denied, you're no worse off than you were before. So yeah, motion as much as possible, cite to other states, even if, it's not obviously, something that the courts have to rely on, but I think it's also incredibly informative for the courts to know that other states are doing this, or talk about the Federal Crime Victim Rights Act. And and really NCVLI is so awesome in that regard, because it's got such a wealth of information about what's going on in other states, but it also connects you to so many other people and their ideas. And I know I love the monthly litigation calls, because everybody is so creative and comes up with different ideas. So much so that, as you know, I stole that and started doing one just for Wisconsin crime victim attorneys that we meet once a month. And it really makes a difference. And yeah, no, I have a total work crush on NCVLI. Kind of like, like it's, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I love going to the conference. I love being able to do things like this and presentations and stuff. So, but it's also, I think, a really good way if you're just getting into the idea of representing victims, or if you're a victim yourself, kind of thing, and you want to know what's possible or not possible. Yes, I would definitely recommend it. And if you're a practicing victim rights attorney, the membership is well worth the money. So
absolutely. Well, the feeling is mutual. We absolutely love the work that you're doing and love to support it and connect with you. And you touched on so many important things. What we know about victim satisfaction at the end of the day is it isn't about whether, somebody went to jail or whether they won the jury trial. So much of their satisfaction lies in them feeling like they were heard and feeling like they were listened to and represented properly. And so what you're saying right there is that's how we do that. That's how we do this work. We ask for their rights. I guarantee that victim in that courtroom, every time you motion on their behalf, feels empowered as a result, as opposed to sitting in a courtroom where someone's not motioning on their behalf and they just feel frustrated and left out. So thank you for that. You also mentioned conference, which is an incredible thing that NCVLI does. We're doing it virtually this year, back in June. So we're really excited. Please check out the website for that. But how can people learn more about you and your program? Where can folks find you if they are in Wisconsin or just in other states and they want to learn more about what you're doing, or maybe grab some of those sample motions that you talked about and try to utilize them?
I am always happy to share motions. I think like 80% of good lawyering is stealing. Like, it's really, don't reinvent the wheel, So yeah, so Legal Action has a website, just like Sound Legal Action. I actually think it's legalaction.org. I don't know how we managed to grab that without having to add the Wisconsin part to it. Somebody had a lot of foresight, so well done them. But yeah, it has links there. We are I am not personally, but we're active on Facebook. I think you tagged the Facebook account. We're on Twitter, things like that. And we have really just a kind of open, we love to give advice and help. And I would I would recommend anyone to just call our office, or you can email me. My email address is really easy. It's just akr@legalaction.org. Always happy to talk and help. If you are an attorney in Wisconsin and you are doing victim rights and you feel like you're alone, we do have a group we started about a year ago. Like I said, that meets once a month. Email me and I'll get you in the group. And we are incredibly excited that, along with the Department of Justice in Wisconsin and Marcy's Law for Wisconsin, we are putting on this year our very first ever Wisconsin Crime Victim Rights Conference. So again, more things that we steal from NCVLI. It'll be virtual, it's free. It's April 13th and 14th. You can go ahead and register by going to Marcy's Law for Wisconsin.com, or if you have the, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, if it's Hoover or Hova. I like Hoover. Yeah, if you go there and you type in Wisconsin crime victim, it'll come up. So register, and that's gonna, like I said, happen April 13th and 14th. So we're really excited about that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for joining us, for lending your expertise for everything that you do. You know, it is truly our collective responsibility to ensure that victims' rights are afforded, because meaningful victim participation ensures better systems and it empowers communities. So whether you are an attorney, a prosecutor, a judge, a lawmaker, an advocate, an ally, a survivor, are you asking for rights? Are you meaningfully engaging these rights every day? That's what this series is about. So again, thank you so much for being here with us. To learn more about the National Crime Victim Law Institute, the RISE Project, and the Ask for Rights campaign and how you can get involved, please go to ncvli.org today. And we will see you next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you.